Is if you want to make more money and change your mindset of money to go to the next level, one of the most impactful things you can do is take I out and start thinking about you and us. The real money is never made just by one individual. It is always team. It is always we, not me. So I made my 7 figures in my corporate job as an employee, and I couldn't figure out how to break into 8. And the only way you get to 8 and beyond is you lead people. I think the first thing that I learned about money is it's abundant, it's everywhere, it is not zero sum. Anybody can make a lot of it if they want to. Mindset 1. Mindset 2 is it's not just about me. I got to sell a dream so big other people can see themselves underneath it, and my dream is bigger than theirs. And then I think level 3 is, all right, there's a ton of money. I can get a great team with me, but now I got to choose the game I want to play. Where do a high probability of people win? Finance is a good example of that. You figure out which one has the highest likelihood of you winning.
What makes a good CEO or a good boss? I'm sure that people would describe me as being high maintenance, or at least like, I think the word that I always heard from my peeps was, you're very strong. You have a very strong personality. And I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah. I get intense.
Yeah. Intense. I mean, I wrote a book. The podcast is called, because of the book, Pretty Intense.
I know. That's why I giggled when I saw it.
So I get it. Like I get described like that a lot, but I wonder if that's where its place is and what makes a good boss or CEO, because, you know, with how much you speak to money and making it and just all of the financial independence that people want, there's got to be some personality traits to help you get there. And so maybe we start with like a boss or CEO.
I like that.
Who doesn't want to be that?
Yeah, until you get there. And then you're like, whoops, did I want this? But yeah, I love that. I mean, I think, at least from my perspective, your job isn't to be liked, it's to win. And so, you know, when I talk to my team, I'm like, I'm not here to be your buddy or your friend. We're here to have fun and like have a good time while we complete the mission. But like my goal for you is that you're richer, you're smarter, you're better after you're done with our time together, whatever that is. My goal is not that, you know, it's sweet and kind the whole time. And so I think it's like super important you set that standard up front. Yeah. You know, otherwise people could cancel you on the internet. Like I always think about the women who get canceled who are CEOs, and I think it's their fault. And the reason why is because they come off as like sweet and nice, and I'm the good CEO, and I wear pink all day, you know, and I'm friends with everybody. And then they have to do what CEOs do sometimes, which is fire people, be intense, have hard conversations, and it breaks that frame.
So people are shocked.
They're shocked.
So they're like, you're a fake.
You're a fake. Yeah. And if instead you're like, yes, I am intense. And yes, I do fire people, and evidenced 3,000 pieces of content before that. Why are you surprised? Like, this is what it takes.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's that popular these days.
Yeah.
You know,
I think being consistent is important. I actually think that helped me in my career because I wasn't anyone different at any point, really. I always felt like I had the luxury of being myself. And maybe that's because I started off like that.
Well, and you can't be not intense and do your crazy career. I mean, I was like going back and looking at some old videos of you, which was fun, and seeing like, you know, somebody, I love the one where you go to the Danny Meyer or Danny, whatever.
Danny Hamlin. Yeah, totally.
That was great. And then I also like the one where you go to the fans and you're like, don't do that.
Oh,
you know, don't boo at me.
Yeah.
That takes some balls.
Yeah.
You know?
I was walking back from pit lane, and you know, people just think because they don't know you and they can't touch you on some level, or they're on the internet, or they're off to the side as a fan behind a railing, that they can say some stupid shit.
Right.
And as if I'm not a person.
Right.
So that's what I kind of went over there. So I was really like level-headed and rational in that moment. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go over the top. I'm like, look, I'm a person too. Like, these things hurt my feelings. But do you think I'm not working?
Yeah.
Like, why do you think you can just say whatever you want to me and that I have all the time in the world for you?
Yeah.
You know?
And
like,
you were very level and like kind, actually. Because my gut reaction would have
I was like, don't do that. That's me.
You actually kind of were. No, I think my reaction is not as good.
AG1 is a foundational nutritional supplement that delivers daily nutrition through gut health support and is backed by multiple research studies, so you can trust what you're putting in your body. I trust AG1 because, unlike so many products, their entire formula is backed by research studies, not just the ingredients. Over 14 years, AG1 has been focused on innovation with a trusted, nutrient-dense blend that's the perfect complement to my diet. I can trust their research and how they're validating the product working in the body. AG1 has been third-party tested for safety for years and is trusted by experts and medical professionals, giving you one less thing to research. They're posting results online from their studies, and it's interesting to see how many of the study participants had the same feelings of energy, focus, supported digestion, all from using AG1. For example, at 30 days, 80% of the people in the research study noticed less gas and bloating. 97% of the people in a research study felt more energy. If there's one product I trust to support my whole body health, it's AG1. And that's why I've partnered with them for so long. It's easy and satisfying to start your journey with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3 plus K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/prettyintense. That's drinkag1.com/prettyintense. Check it out.
I probably would have had a few choice words. But I do think that like breaks the third wall a little bit. Where you're like, hey, like I'm just like you. You could be in this position too. Is that really how you want to show up? We should do a compilation of like men in NASCAR talking to fans when they're rude, and then women, because I bet it's like you're the only one that did it, and then all the other ones are probably yelling at them.
Yeah. Or I'm the only one that did it at all.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah, probably true.
It's like an age-old sort of thing that people say about women when they're strong or aggressive, is that they're a bitch.
Yeah.
Why is that so? Why is that such a harder pill to swallow, to like get yelled at by your female boss? Like, why is that not accepted or normal?
First of all, just a math game, right? You know, we haven't had that long with women in positions of power for it to normalize.
Sure.
And so I think,
Simple.
yeah, 1, reps haven't been enough of them. And then 2, I do think, and we're in this moment right now, post Me Too and post sort of this war of men and women in society that we see around us, where women are like, yeah, boss babe, CEO boss, whatever. And men are kind of like, God, I'm tired of hearing about this, that you're a female all the time as a CEO. And so we have this conflict between the two, which I think is sad. You know, one of my favorite lines that I saw from you was something like, I'm not a female driver, I'm just a driver. And I do the same thing. I'm like, I get asked sometimes to speak at events and they're like, we're looking for a female CEO. I'm like, I have no idea what my vagina has to do with this.
Yeah.
You know, and especially when you throw out the hard V, you know, then they get uncomfortable. And I think it like snaps them into it for a second where it's like, yeah, why does that matter?
I like to be a little shocking. Do you like to be a little shocking?
Yeah, I do. Well, I think it's effective. Otherwise, it's hard to break up somebody's frame and get them to like really listen to you.
What ways do you do that?
Probably use the F word too much. Great word.
Exactly.
You know?
When appropriate,
Noun,
absolutely.
verb, you know, adjective, adverb. It's everything. And one is a perfect word. And then, but I think it's a little lazy. So I've been trying to use it less now.
What are some other ones that are new favorites?
Yeah, I know. Exactly. We go through them. Well,
give me the fucking list. Okay?
It's just like such a good exclamation point, isn't it?
Right? It's like makes people go,
yeah, you just listen.
And especially coming from like a boss or someone that's attractive or someone that's in power, it's like, oh shit.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it also, you know, when you're speaking to a crowd of people and you're talking about something really serious, like I talk about finance, and it can be boring, you know, to say the fucking quiet part out loud, and then people don't expect that. And so it's jarring. But I don't have a good response lately. I was testing some out yesterday with the team, and I was like, should we do sound effects? You know, so instead of like fuck, should I just be like, hey, you know? And they're like, no, don't do that. You know, that doesn't work. So I don't have a good answer yet. But I do think if you want to do really big things, you have to act abnormally. You know, I haven't met very many really successful humans who are timid and quiet and play by the party lines. I just don't think those two things go together very well.
You know, I said at the beginning, I was like, well, you know, everyone wants to be a CEO. Tell us how to do it.
Yeah.
But I actually don't think that's true, to be honest. I think in an idealistic world, people would say, I'm my own boss and I create my own destiny on some level. Like, oh, yeah, I'm in charge of my whole life and I don't have to answer to anybody. I think these are like ideas that people probably generally like. But I think in my opinion, I'm curious yours, are there people that do just want to be employees? There are people that don't want certain jobs. There's people that can't handle the pressure and don't want to do it. They don't even want to figure it out. Like, are there buckets of people in the world that are really happy where they're at? Or do you think that everyone is generally aspiring for more?
Everyone is internally aspiring for more, I think, for the most part, mentally. But let's look at the math again. You have 3% of Americans own a business. Of those 3%, 10% of businesses will ever get to $1 million in sales. Of the ones that make it to 10 figures in revenue, that's 0.4% of all businesses. And so mathematically speaking, most people, 97% of people, never become an owner of a small business ever, or any business.
Stress is a common factor that affects everyone in today's fast-paced world, leading to various issues. What if the answer to a better stress response is in a key nutrient? I'm talking about magnesium. Actually, I'm specifically talking about Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. This one-of-a-kind product is designed to reverse low levels of magnesium, which could be leading to a multitude of other health problems. What sets Magnesium Breakthrough apart is its ability to support healthy levels of stress hormones like cortisol, a better balanced stress response in your nervous and hormone systems, and healthy production of GABA, the relaxing neurotransmitter, leading to a more peaceful and better flow state. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience and better sleep, all in one bottle. Simply go to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense. In addition to the discount you get by using promo code PrettyIntense, there are always amazing gifts with purchase. Go now to bioptimizers.com/prettyintense and get your Magnesium Breakthrough and find out this month's gift with purchase.
99.6% of people never will hit 8 figures in revenue. And yet we've sort of normalized it like, oh yeah, another 8-figure business, a CEO, a founder. And I think we're doing a huge disservice to most humans when in reality, most people will just never be part of the 1% because that's how math works. And so I do think we can raise the bar. We can be like the napkin where you lift up, the middle as the CEO of your business and the corners, other people that are your employees rise with you. Beautiful, totally doable. But most people, I think when they feel the pressures of not making payroll on Friday night and you don't know how you're going to pay your employees or the business is down and it all has to come out of your salary, that is an existential fear, I think, that when most people touch it, they don't want to do it again. It's like touching a hot oven. You have to be a little bit of a masochist, I think, to want to play this game.
Should you try and find a way to make more money?
Yeah.
Or is it wiser to figure out what to do with it when you have it?
Smart. 2 ideas. One, if you want to be really rich, you can never save your way to real wealth. I totally don't believe that. I disagree.
Give me a scale of real wealth. What is...
Let's say financially free in a 9-to-5 while you can still enjoy it before you hit retirement.
Okay.
So if you want to get really wealthy by saving and you wait until you're 65 plus, that probably works. But if you want to be quite wealthy in your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're going to have to push the earn button hard. Dave Ramsey's incredible, and Ramit Sethi and some of these guys for budgeting, which is a foundational thing you need to do. But what is easier? Saving your way to zero, spending nothing, having no fun in life, never living anywhere nice, taking 0 vacations, eating ramen every day, or doing a bunch of really hard, terrible things, but living a really fun life. So, working late, working early, learning a lot of skills, but getting to vacation, live in a nice spot, enjoy a nice meal, etc. I think more people should optimize for earning because then you can budget still, but you can never save your way to rich. If you want to get ahead in the world today, what I did that worked for me was I started off in corporate. I was too much of a wuss to go and do my own thing. And so I actually worked for other people in money because I wanted more money. So I had to understand it for like 10 years. What's cool about that is finance pays really well and you can grow fast in how much money you make. And you learn how to invest it because that's the entire job, basically. And so I went through all these expensive training companies at these big corporations, which kids these days hate this idea, right? Everybody wants to go like hang out on a beach and write copy for TikTok or something. So
not really work, but work from the beach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think remote work is where dreams go to die. But
interesting because we're way in that phase right now.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. I was talking to 2 really big media companies that if I said their names, they're the two of the most successful modern day media companies. And I asked both of the CEOs, why do you think you're so successful through a period in which most media companies have had massive issues and they're falling everywhere? And they both said the same thing. And it was, we're in person. We're 100% in person. And we run this like a real business. And I think you can be an exceptional CEO and company and run remote, but you have to be exceptional. And that's just really hard to do. And so it's much easier to run a really strong in-person business where you can have eyes on. And so that's what we do now. Almost all of my companies are in person, not 100%. But I think we'll all make more money and we'll win more by moving faster than everybody else.
What are those like secret sauce ingredients to being in the office, being together?
Yeah. Well, first, speed to urgency. So I have a good friend. Do you know Bill Perkins? So he's a super famous amateur poker player, but hedge fund managers where he made all his money. Anyway, we did a deal together and I remember presenting him sort of a couple different ideas. And I was like, Bill, you've made hundreds of millions of dollars in so many different ways successfully over time. You're pretty young. Like, what's the deal? How'd you do that? And he thought about it for a second and he was like, one thing, I move faster than everybody else. He's like, by the time somebody else thinks about an idea, takes it to their group of advisors and finally implements it, yeah, I've done it, made 3 mistakes, found a better way, and moved forward. He's like, I'm just faster. I'm not smarter, I'm not richer, I'm not better. And I like that because you can control speed. I can't control the other things.
I don't really get money that well. I have this very interesting relationship with money where I think my mindset around money is good, but I don't really know what to do.
What do you think about money? Like, what is your mindset on money?
That it's just energy. So if I work, I get it.
Yeah.
And it's just an exchange.
Yeah.
And it's exchange of value too, because my job, especially in racing, was so rare.
Yeah.
Like I got paid for that and I worked really hard. So I got a lot.
Right.
But I'm not a numbers person. I'm not a P&L report person. I don't understand very much I don't have a lot of what I'd say like financial literacy, I would say. I love learning, so this is a good conversation for me. Financial language is something like, what is that? What do I need to know about financial language?
Well, what I would say first is if you want to make more money and change your mindset of money to go to the next level, one of the most impactful things you can do is take I out and start thinking about you and us. And so the real money is never made just by one individual. It is always team. It is always we, not me. And when I realized that is when I started to break out. So I made my 7 figures in my corporate job as an employee, right? And I couldn't figure out how to break into 8. And the only way you get to 8 and beyond is you lead people. It's all about people at that point.
You lead people.
Yeah. And so,
You're saying changing people out too, like getting the right people or just doing a better job of leading the ones that you have?
Could be either or.
Yeah.
Usually it is, you always want top performers because the lowest level of your team is what your fastest movement can ever be. And so when you have an underperformer on your team, that toxicity and cancer that comes, not even if they're not nice, but if they're too slow for everybody else, just imagine you're running a race and you're dragging somebody behind you. A lot harder to move. You need to be, David Goggins, everybody carries the boat, right? And so, I think the first thing that I learned about money is, one, you're right. It's abundant. It's everywhere. It is not zero sum. Anybody can make it. Anybody can make a lot of it if they want to. Mindset 1. Mindset 2 is it's not just about me. I got to sell a dream so big other people can see themselves underneath it. And my dream is bigger than theirs. So they actually want to ride my dream, not theirs. And then I think level 3 is, all right, there's a ton of money. I can get a great team with me, but now I got to choose the game I want to play. And so that
doesn't come first?
It doesn't have to, no. And usually this doesn't because you'll play lots of games in your career. You've played lots of games in your career.
I guess you're right. I'm playing lots of games.
Yeah. But you figure out which one has the highest likelihood of you winning over time. And I personally am not Elon Musk. I'm not like a genius where anything I do, I could win at, which means that I got to be careful which games I play because otherwise, if it's a low probability of winning, let's say Hollywood, we're in LA, right? There are people who have made tons of money in Hollywood, but it's a very small percentage and it's super permissioned. You can't just step in there and start doing whatever you want. And it doesn't have a lot of leverage. And so I always look for games where it's like, hey, where do a high probability of people win? Finance is a good example of that. Where is there a lot of leverage? So it doesn't have to just be me. And where is it permissionless? Nobody can tell me, no, you can't break into this. Podcast, perfect example. You can start your own podcast. You can do whatever you want. You can't go star in an MGM movie just because you want to.
It's totally true. I think about my businesses from a standpoint of like you say, okay, I can identify with my own businesses, which ones win. It's real easy, but I got to do it. So what I want is the businesses where I can just like, they're on autopilot. I want mailbox money that's like real fuck you money. Not like a lot of money, because that's great. And I still do that work. That's a lot of money, and it's so dumb to say no. But I want like the real fuck you money. And I only have so much energy. So when I look at my businesses, I also try and look at ones that have what I call like no ceiling. And this is where it gets back into the employee conversation of like, there tends to be ceilings there. When you own it, there's no ceiling a lot of times. How big you could get, right? Like whoever thought you could like make so much money in food delivery, right? Or, you know, make so much money selling pillows, you know, like, I mean, 100%. Like anything is scalable, but you have to be the one that it has to be yours. When I'm looking at that, where do I draw the line between putting my efforts all into the stuff that works, or someone else putting their efforts into the stuff that wins, versus the hope and dream of something that like is a home run?
Well, I kind of like the barbell approach. So I sort of think about investing very similar as I do businesses. You have, you know, a few things that are slow and steady, going to pay you nicely, probably unlikely to fail. So that might be things like owning multifamily, investing, owning a laundromat, owning a car wash, things that like you're never going to make billions unless you become exceptional at, right? But you're probably pretty likely to kind of keep cutting checks every month. And then on the other side, you have your big home runs, which is, I don't know, maybe your wine company or maybe a SaaS company where you're like, this could be huge. Also could highly likely to fail, right? And so I want to balance the two until I get really good at figuring out where is there not only a game that I'm incredible at playing, but is also a level 10 game. And a lot of this you learn in finance early on because you invest in all these businesses, right? So how do you tell what you should do? You just see all these deals and you go, you know, for instance, a wine business is a hard business. I know, like the best way to make $1 million in wine, start with 3. You know, it's
a lot more than that.
Yeah.
It's a lot more than that.
Right. So
I wish this was wine.
It's
but not mine. I need the profits.
Yeah, exactly. It's a beautiful thing to do if you're obsessed with it, but it's a hard business. And so, you know, I don't think you have to own every business to make millions at all. You can make millions as an employee in somebody else's business. You just have to understand deal making, which is how do I become so valuable in what I do that I get a piece of the upside. And that is also what finance teaches you that nobody learns, which is, you know, I was just telling the team, somebody wrote one of our newsletters and they said in it, you know, you can't get rich in your job. And I was like, I disagree.
Isn't that the point?
It's the total point. You can't get rich being mediocre in your job.
Right.
Yeah. But if you become really valuable to people who are really good at making money, I think it is the fastest path to making more money. And that's what I did. You know, I made $1 million W-2 income multiple years because I was with a firm that made a ton of money and I was really good. And there was just so much abundance there. And it's the same for my teams. You know, a lot of my executives get equity.
I was just going to ask about equity, because I think this is also another position where employees tend to do the safe route. I find much of the time where they're like, you know, I'd rather take the guaranteed money. I'd rather know. They want the safety versus the way potential upside. So do you have recommendations on that? If a boss offers you equity?
So let's say you're an employee first. If you think that you are exceptional and you can affect the outcome to make more money for the company, bet on yourself. Take the equity. Lower your salary. And especially if you're young, do it. If you have no ability to affect the outcome and you don't think you're exceptional, I think spend a little bit more time learning your skill set because you probably won't earn enough equity for you to be able to make up the fact that you will have to be paid a lot less. So I think there's a skill balance here. And then if you're a CEO, my take on giving equity is the only people that get equity are people who, if they left the company, it would be detrimental to the company. Then you get equity, but nobody gets it year one ever in my companies, because when you get equity, you're saying, I want to go on a journey with you for life, maybe. Because the worst thing would be you give somebody equity in one of your businesses and they leave. Who's stuck with it?
Well, you still got to deal with them.
That's exactly right. Well, you got to deal with them, and then you got to keep working on the business, and they get to go right off in the sunset while you still do the work.
Well, then it also, that also makes me think of, and I'm very curious too, because I'm not very good at knowing when to, like I own all of my businesses outright. Like they're all my own money and no investors.
Danica.
And so
none, zero?
No.
Okay.
And I think I got burned in racing because I was in a profit sharing agreement with a team and they didn't really pay me and I didn't get documentation and it just got fucking messy. I mean, I think I got a really gun shy on having there being multiple people of ownership. It just made me feel like it was going to be very difficult. And so if I had the ability to not have to deal with anyone, then I should. But I'm not 100% sure I've gone about it in the right way. And I think then I've lost expertise as well that could come in another way. Cause I don't have a ton. Like I know how to dream. I know how to visualize. I know how to fucking move the cart, right? Like I know how to motivate people. I know how to sell. I can be out there. I can get on the cover of the magazine for it if you need it. But like as far as like the details are not my thing. So I think I've lost out in those ways, but I'm curious, like, what's the deciding factor for someone out there that's got a side hustle and they want to grow it, or maybe they just want to take it to the next level? I mean, I think that we tend to see this a lot with companies that, maybe they're smaller companies and then they do an angel round, right? And they get investors. Okay. So before we get into like what that looks like, when do you decide and why would you have investors and how does that look?
Yeah. First of all, women are terrible at getting investment in business. And there could be two sides to that. Could be that they don't get it from investors for whatever reason. Could be also that they don't ask for it. But if you look at the percentage differential, I'm sure the internet will tell me what it is today. But back when I was doing analysis on it, it's like they get 16 cents on every dollar to male founders. So way lower. And it's sort of the same with negotiation. We also negotiate our salary about 1/3 as often as our male counterparts, which explains a lot of the pay discrepancy, both time and work because of pregnancy and leaving careers at varying points of time, and number that we negotiate. So those two things actually determine most of the gender pay gap. And nobody talks about that for whatever reason, because they just want to say we pay women less. And I never really like that because I don't think we should be victims. We should be like, what can we do to change the outcome? You know, the outcome is not just women make less money. Let's go put on pussy hats and like run around and parade for that. It's like, how do we change that?
Or just complain.
Exactly.
What do you do?
Yeah, let's go negotiate.
Or
better.
why is it, or is it even real? Because look, I got paid more than most of the guys, so.
Yeah, well, that's true. And you probably negotiated for it. You positioned yourself really well. You were top tier. You looked different.
I believed I deserved it.
Yeah, totally.
For many reasons.
100%. Yeah. Case in point, I don't know any other NASCAR drivers' names but yours. I think we need to do more of that, and we need to do more of it when we take investment dollars too. So I think you're right. When I started doing businesses later on, I stopped taking third-party capital because I had my own money. Right. So I used my own cash. Right. But whenever I have a big, huge swing that could potentially bankrupt me if I do it just by myself, I always bring on investors. And the reason why is because I don't want one single point of failure. Like I've been pretty successful to this date, but I want to make sure that one thing can't take me out. I mean, Elon's really, really rich. He still raised money. Why? Because he's thinking so big that even his huge personal bank account is not big enough. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with taking capital. I do think you have to get really good at pitching it and coming up with how to structure it. Most people don't know how to do that. And if you do that, then raising capital is a good thing. And people will throw money at you and you can come up with the right terms if you understand deal making.
How does this go on a real small level? I mean, I think that when you get to the larger levels where you have like, you know, where this is going through firms and, you know, you're properly doing like angel rounds, series A, B, like you're going through those funds when you raise those funds with VCs. But then there are also just people that are starting a business that are like, I don't have the money. What do they do? Like, how do you go about that? And what do you offer the person that's giving it to you?
Yeah, it's a good point.
Because it could be your parents even, right? Could be a friend. It could be a mentor.
in the beginning, when you go and raise money, it is just friends and family. It's just thinking about it the same way that people go out and raise big, huge venture checks. It's the same thing when you go and raise for a small business. So let's say you have a little Etsy shop that you want to scale.
Right.
You know, I kind of like when people start themselves. So like put your own skin in the game a little bit, you know, get an MVP going, get some products out there, get a few sales, make sure you actually want to continue doing this.
Prove it out a little bit.
Exactly. And then after you've done that, then you put together what's called a one sheet. And a one sheet basically just says, here's the goal for the business. Here's how much money I need. Here's what I'm going to do with the money, which is called proof of funds and, use of funds, excuse me. Like what they're going to do with the money that you give them. Then, a little section on what they get if they win. And so that section is where you can play. And so that's where you could go, hey, I need 10K for my Etsy shop because I want to scale it. That will give me 2 months of products. I think we can make 50K on the 2 months of products. For your 10K, I'm going to give you 10% of the business. And you just structure it's what's called pro rata, which means the percentage that they give you is that percentage of the valuation of the company. And so anyway, I think a lot of people could do this sooner. But the only key is you just got to make sure you tell people, like, there's just as much likelihood that we lose this as that we do something with this.
Yeah. Well, and if you're smart at offering up money, you use your rational brain. You only give money that you're willing to lose.
100%. That's exactly right.
Like even when I do investing in funds are a little different. I've invested a little bit more larger sums into funds, but into individual companies themselves. I mean, even for someone like me who has, you know, good wealth, like the recommendation is under 100. Yeah. 50 to 100.
Yeah.
50,000 to 100,000.
Well, I think no matter where you're at, I think if you haven't made your first $1 million, don't make a single angel investment.
Oh, really?
No.
And you mean profit $1 million, or you mean generate like
I think
cash
when you
flow?
have $1 million of net worth, and ideally it's not your house. So, you know, you have investments, you have cash. When you have that, then I think you can start thinking about investing in angel companies. But before that, quite honestly, 90% of them lose money. So don't get caught up in the hype. Instead, you invest in boring things. I obviously have a bias to that, but you could invest in a laundromat, a car wash. You could invest in your local Airbnb business, but don't go for moonshots before you've made your mill, because moonshots often miss.
Is that the rate? 90% usually fail?
90% of all startups fail.
So the one other question I had when you were talking about like 10% equity for money, is there a rule of thumb sort of math for how much percent, like how much they give you versus how much equity they get? Yeah. Because I've also been offered that the other way, where it's like, oh, we'll give you a little bit of this equity, and I'm like thinking like, that doesn't seem like enough, or like, you know what I mean? Or then there's one deal I did where I was like, this seems way too good to be true. Turns out it was. So like, is there a rule of thumb for how much you get of something versus how much you give? Yeah. I mean, a couple of ways to think about it. For startups, if you have a tech-enabled startup, usually those are valued, if it's a first-time founder and they haven't done something before, at somewhere in the realm of $2 to $10 million per year revenue. So that's tech-enabled startups. So if you gave $1 million to something that's worth $2 million, you should be getting 50% of the company. So you do it based on the valuation and just what percentage of the valuation did you invest. And bigger companies, though. Yeah. I'm guessing the Etsy store does not have a valuation. No, but how you value a company is also very easy. So you take the profit that the company makes times 2 or 3, and that's called your multiple, your profit multiple. And so if the Etsy store was making, let's say, $5,000, and you could do it 2 ways. The better way for you as the founder would be to say, all right, last month I made $5,000 in profit. I think I'm going to make $50,000 all year, or I think I'm going to make $100,000 all year profit. So I want to value the company at $200,000 to $300,000, because that's 2 to 3x my profit. So then you'd go and say, would you give me $100,000 for half or a third of the company? And that would be a reasonable way to do it. And then your investor is going to come back to you and go, nah, I think it's only worth $50,000. So I'll give you 25 for 50% of the company. And it's kind of like haggling. But you're right.
Nobody really teaches that, and it seems overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people.
It's always been overwhelming to me, and that's really made me shy away sometimes from doing deals because I feel like since I don't know and someone's offering, that they're not gonna over offer me, right? So I automatically feel like I'm being taken advantage of. So I'm like, maybe just no. Right? And I think that's also maybe why I don't get investors or haven't done equity stuff is because I don't really know what I'm supposed to do. Like it seems like it's just like no man's land to me. Numbers are like Chinese to me.
Well, I can't speak it. Me neither. So we're together on that one. I think if you remember really one thing, which is the amount of profit a company makes times 2 to 3x is what the value is.
Cool.
That's it. Simple. Don't make it anything crazier than that. And then there will be wiggle room on both sides, but you can at least start with a baseline. And so if somebody comes to you and they say, actually, this company's worth $10,000, even though we haven't made $1, you get to say this line, which is, I value companies typically as a multiple of profit. You don't have profit. How did you get to this number? And you just saying that line is going to differentiate you as like the 1% of people in business because most people don't even know that. And so it's a good baseline to just start any negotiation. I value companies based on profit at about a 2 to 3x multiple. If you want a deal in that range, we could talk. Otherwise, how did you get to this number? And you're going to have to explain it to me. And the other part that's important for, I think, anybody who isn't a money person is just realizing that you not knowing this has nothing to do with your IQ. And people in finance try to make you feel dumb for not knowing this stuff. You know, and they use all these words and acronyms and whatever. That's just for them to take your money. That's just for them to be able to charge and them to be able to confuse people and you to give your money away to somebody else. And realize that the whole time, the smartest investors I ever know will say things like, can you explain this to me like I'm 6?
Good, that's me. That's me the whole time. What are some of the dumbest things that CEOs and bosses do that take down a company?
Worst thing you can do as a CEO is not be the hardest worker in a room. I think if you asked anybody on this team of mine, they would say that I lead from the front in that. And the second that you lose the respect of your team is the second you won't have high performers work for you anymore. I mean, what's the easiest way to measure it? Quantitatively, time. So, you know, I'm up early, I'm sending emails late, and I work longer and harder than anybody on the team, for sure. It's going to be really hard for somebody to outwork me. And why that's okay is because then if I require a lot from my team, I say, I will never require something from you that I won't do. And it's so commonsensical, and yet it's not done very often. And then the second thing is, even when I'm really, really mad, which happens, you know, sometimes, and somebody lies to me or steals from me or does something really bad, your job as a CEO is to be the pro in the room. And I think a lot of CEOs yell and scream and lose it. And I have no respect for that. And so I think the second worst thing you can do as a CEO is treat somebody like you wouldn't want to be treated. And I've got no problem somebody being stern with me and saying, you said you were going to do this and you didn't, and now you need to fix it. But I do have a problem with somebody yelling at me. That, I think, is a big difference. But don't get me wrong, Steve Jobs yelled at everybody all the time. Elon Musk is known to yell occasionally too. So you don't have to be perfect to be a CEO. But I do think it helps if you try.
How important do you think it is for a boss to take the blame and be the ultimate fall person?
I actually disagree with Jocko on this, for instance. Jocko says extreme ownership starts from the top. Now, I think when you are a boss and something goes wrong, it is important for you to realize the buck stops with you. At the end of the day, nobody else can hold your bag. It's your company. But there is a problem sometimes with leaders, especially young ones, where they say, that's my bad, that's on me, that's me. The question you have to ask yourself is, what is true? And if what is true is that somebody let you down, didn't do something else inside of the company, didn't follow through, you will fall to the level of your expectations. And so you got to make sure that you hold your team accountable. And sometimes it's not your fault. And instead you have to say, this is your fault. You did this and we need to change it. And if it happens again, there's going to be a consequence. And I have seen that go sideways quite a few times with leaders where they just fall on their sword, and nothing ever changes. That's at least my take.
What's the process to deciding to fire someone? How does that go?
Well, how about this? Every single business has one person that is holding you back from where you want to go next.
Just as a standard. That's just true.
Every single business. And it is the person that you already know you need to fire. And you just haven't. And typically,
So you're saying the intuition of it, like, you know what? You're just not the
know.
one.
You know.
Yeah.
And the problem is that we second guess ourselves. But what I will say is I have never once fired somebody from a company and regretted it. Not once. And I've been running companies for almost 20 years now. You typically know. And it's fun too. You can play the game. I was in a CEO room the other day giving a little speech, and I said that line that I've never once regretted firing somebody after I had done it. And then I asked the crowd, have you guys ever regretted firing somebody? And there was like one person in the front, and I asked him the question, and it was a family thing. So they had regretted firing the person because it was bad family dynamics after that. But almost anywhere, you're going to find that if you think you should fire them, you should. And how I feel better about it is realizing that, like, there's nothing worse than being an underperforming employee. It sucks. I've been there. I've been there when I wasn't the top performer. The team didn't want me. You know, I wasn't really happy. They weren't happy with me. Your person knows they need to go too.
I think they know.
They know.
I have a theory that everyone gets himself fired from situations. It could be a relationship too, or a job. Like, in the end, maybe they don't really know it, but they're doing things that don't build their value or make them seem like they really want the job, because either they kind of don't want to be there, they maybe know that, or they just don't realize how out of alignment they are with that business.
You're right.
And I think that's a real problem. I think people think they might want to do something, or think they're in a good job, or think this is where they should stay, but it's not something that they're passionate and into.
Yep.
And how important is that? I'm curious, like, that you really love what you do. Like, how important is that to actually be able to progress and work your ass off and be a valuable employee?
Well, the best employees learn to love the game, not necessarily love every play. And so I think there's many times in my career where I absolutely hated the day-to-day of what I did. It was a miserable existence in finance in the beginning. And, and there were moments where I would watch the clock hoping for nothing more than the day to be over faster, which is a weird thing for mortals. And yet, I knew that it was furthering my goal. And so I think you can have two types of things. I think people these days think you have to love what you do. You have to be passionate about it. And at a full spectrum standpoint, you do. Like, you do have to love the grind and the game that you are playing fully. But I don't think you have to love your day to day. In fact, you probably should expect that your first job you're going to hate. It's going to be really boring. You're not going to get paid very much. You're going to wish you did something else. You're going to think you're smarter than other people. And guess what? Probably your second and third job you will too. And only after doing things you don't really like and getting better where you have real skills can you get the ability to do something you really love. And I've seen it happen so many times with young kind of creators on the internet, let's say. And if you were to see them exterior wise, they look shiny, right? Fancy cars, kind of famous-ish. You'd think they got it down. I want their job. And then they call me and they're like, I'm miserable. The business is up and down. I don't really like what I'm doing. I would say probably like 70% of the young creators that I know are like this. And I'm like, you guys, that's because you're kind of selling this dream that's not real. And it's normal to not like the game. It's like being a creator online is just like any other business. Long hours, lots of work, stuff you don't want to do, expensive, up and down months.
So what's their dilemma?
Typically it's that they think that if they are their own boss, that means they get to be their own boss. But what it really means is it's like you're the janitor and the secretary and the CEO and everything else. And so they don't really want to do it all, but they want to get it all. And so our statement is always that we do what is required, not what we want. And I think that's a better path to being happy.
It makes me think about the fact that goals are really important. Like, actually knowing where you want to go. Because, like, as an example, when I was growing up in racing, it's like, do I like to have fun? Sure. But did I go party and do stupid things and put myself in a bad situation? No, because my dad put the fear of God in me. He's like, if you get caught drunk driving or doing any of these things, get drug tested, you're going to not be able to race for the rest of your life. And I was like, oh, like there was something I wanted more. So it makes me think that the people that don't put that effort in kind of subconsciously and get themselves fired, they don't really know where they're going. They don't really have the goal, because if they had a goal, they'd know that, well, it's almost like it becomes their personality, right? They're like, I just succeed at whatever I do. And even though I don't want to be here, I know where I want to go. But it seems like the goal anchors you. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree. It's really hard to to get to your destination if you don't know where you're going.
How do you make a goal? Like, how do you get people to dream big?
Yeah. Well, I think when you're young, in particular, dreaming and coming up with goals is actually really hard because you don't know yourself, right? Yourself is somebody totally different 5 and 10 years on a continual basis.
It's about every 2 for me still. So
yeah. And so I think in the beginning, you have to be honest about the fact that you don't really know. And so, and that's okay. But what you do know is like micro things. You don't understand the macro. You're not like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. That's it. But you might understand the micro, which is, I want to make good money. What's good money? I don't know. I want to make 6 figures a year. I want to do something that allows me to travel. Okay, cool. I actually don't care about travel. I just want to get really good at videography because I love videography. Does that mean I want to be Spielberg, or does that mean I want to head the Daily Wire? I don't know. And so I think we can take these little stair steps all the way to our goal by understanding the micro things that we like. It's kind of like you just check in on your health tests, right? You're like, how are we doing? Do I like this? Am I happy? Is my body aligned? Do I eat this? Do I feel good?
Yeah.
Same thing with work.
Yeah.
But most people don't teach you that. They teach you become a partner at a law firm and do everything you can to get there.
You made me think about a different direction that we could go that might be kind of interesting. Work is hard, life is hard, things are stressful. I think when you're not doing something that's meant for you, your body shows it and tells you. I'm curious, like from an energetic standpoint, from a physiological standpoint, like I'm just riffing on this idea that, you know, you work your ass off. Has there been signs along the way that you were like, look, I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I'm either exhausted, like this taps my energy immediately, or I'm actually symptomatic of these things. Like, can the body inform us a little bit sometimes when we're doing something that's meant for us versus not?
When I was in finance my last couple of years, my husband now will say, like, I used to have like pretty big bags under my eyes that I thought.
You have 0.
Thank you. I also have a lot of face paint
I was
on.
like, do you have filler? Because your under eye looks perfect.
No, thank you though. I totally would one day. I'm totally not against it, but I don't have it right now.
I don't. For anybody.
I do Botox, although I haven't got it in a while. So,
we'll see how Monday. I think it's time. It's
not
really all gone, but
no, it looks
we don't really ever like it to be all gone.
No, that is true. Yeah, I tried to not do too much stuff on my face. I did get a nose job. And it didn't help at all. I'm still like super nasal. I was supposed to fix it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then the other half was obviously aesthetic.
Sure.
Like I wanted it to be cuter and smaller.
Well, it is cute.
Yeah. But I thought about it later. I'm like, my naval passage is now smaller. And I think I'm going to have better nasal. Like, get out of here, Codie. What a dumb idea.
Also, if there's a sale, and, you know, as a woman, if you were going to buy it anyway and it's on sale, it's a call to actually saving money.
Yeah, that's
because you were going to buy it anyway.
This is girl
at
math.
Full price.
Yes.
So if it was 100, now it's 75. You actually saved $25. You didn't spend 75.
That's what happened. Also, the worst thing I think to happen to women's finances ever in life is the Instagram shopping algorithm. That motherfucker gets me nonstop. Does it get you?
Like sending you ads of things that you might like?
Yes.
Yeah. It's pretty good at it.
It's so good. I think Mark Zuckerberg knows me better than my husband. Like he's just like, he sends me every ad to exactly what I want.
They say that, like, I mean, back when it was a social experiment came out many years ago, the algorithms actually know you better than you. Like, so you think, oh my God, it heard me, but I didn't, or someone said the other day, I didn't even mention it, but an ad popped up and I was like, that's because the algorithm knows you better than you.
It's so
Which
true.
is probably why we're just a simulation. So
I'm not uncertain that we're not. We'll have to, like some of your podcasts, I was having some fun going through some historical one, and then I'd watch your facial expression when somebody said something like a little crazy.
And I'm like,
yeah. Although the simulation seems real these days.
I mean, if we can all fit into zeros and ones and patterns and, you know, I mean, we can fit into an Enneagram or astrology or a gene key or, you know, human design, an archetype, a blueprint of something. I don't know. We're all following a pattern.
I know.
And I keep
want a
repeating
reset
them too.
of it.
I'm 42. One time I'll figure it out. Like the patterns, you know, sometime I'll break it, I'm sure. I've broke quite a few.
I've got a few of those too still. That's probably we do until we die, I would imagine. Or we get brought back as a new character. I don't know how this works.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God, we're going deep.
Yeah, so I think I'm curious about, like, how can your body tell you what to do or not? And if you asked young Codie that, I would have thought it was woo nonsense, crystals, Austin, you know. But yeah, I looked totally different. We were kind of talking about this beforehand, but I had like these bags under my eyes, and I I drank a lot more. I like drank a lot of wine, and I had a lot of stomach issues, like way more than I do now. And I think it came from that. It was like, I actually didn't hate the work, but it wasn't the right work for me. Yeah. And it took me getting with my husband and him kind of being like, how you doing? This doesn't seem that normal. And I realized, I just have a high pain tolerance, but I'm not that self-aware of my body. Mm-hmm. And now I try to flip that.
Well, hard workers override a lot of things.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Including how they feel. Yeah. So when we were talking before about like my health journey, yes, part of it was the implants, but there was other things too that were stressors, like in the wrong environment, in the wrong relationship, all those things. Yep. And so, speaking to especially like the hard charger grinder people, the ones that are getting up early to go work out and then going to their job. And then it's like, I wonder if there are other tools that we can use to get indications as to whether or not we're in the right place and doing the right thing. Yeah. So, let's like go a little bit further to, making decisions. And, I would say females have a reputation for being a little bit more intuitive and a little less like analytical and in their head and data, and that we can kind of get gut instincts and, perhaps not necessarily, backed by data reasons to do something. Mm-hmm. But do you use your body or your intuition or sort of the gut and the way things feel to make decisions in business? And is that even a reliable thing to use?
It took me years to get it. I think until I was probably 33. I'm 37 now. I wasn't very good at intuition, very numerically based. And I got divorced too. It was prior to that. And I think it took that. And I had to say no to sort of the person I was before, who wasn't who I wanted to be, in order to make real change and actually hear myself, as touchy-feely as that sounds. And so I went through a lot. And so I shoved her down deep for years, just like put her in the closet.
I didn't even meet her until recently. Exactly. Like, I literally was having a conversation with my friend about this. I'm like, inner child work. I'm like, I promised her, I was like, I promise you, I'll never leave you behind again. I'm not going to ignore you. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah, it's true. I think a lot of us do that. And so, but now these days, I trust my gut on a few things. Mm-hmm. One, we were meant to get a gut reaction about a person instantaneously, because that kept us alive or not. And so, I think we do a lot today in this day and age where we override that. And we shouldn't, especially in deals, in people that we hire, in people we get into business with, and in people we get into bed with. I think it can be okay to be wrong about friendships starting out and things like that, but high level decisions, I think you should trust your gut the second you meet that person. And so now we do. So my husband, he was in the military and institutionalized and like a tough dude. But he would say too that I probably have better intuition with when we meet somebody. And historically, he would rational right brain talk me out of it. And now I don't allow that anymore. I go, nope, I have a feeling, and it's a no.
Wow.
And that was hard to do because no data, no anything.
Right. It's very, it's not very concrete.
No. But when you have that little feeling inside of your gut, 9 times out of 10, it's right. It's probably 10 times out of 10. And also, what's the downside of just passing? So we have a lot of rules now. Like if somebody wants to get into business with us or a deal with us or we get closer, we do nothing for a year. No matter how lovely we think you are or perfect we think you are.
Like a partner, you mean, or an investor or something like that?
No partners, no investors until we've known you for a year. Okay. And that helps a lot because people show you who they are if you give them enough time.
Totally. Yeah. The mask falls at some point.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean they're evil. It just means we're not a good pair.
Yeah.
But, I used to not really understand the term narcissist. And I used to not really.
Sorry, did you have to learn it the hard way?
Yeah. I think everybody does.
Fact. I don't think that because the thing is they're really good at faking it and they're really good at putting on a disguise and, we tend to want to see the best in people usually.
100%.
Or trust. We generally trust people.
I think so. And that's how society works. Mm-hmm. And also if you're successful, that means that you've had a series of things go right over time. Uh-huh. And so you're predisposed to think that it will continue to go right. And so I think for that reason, I had to realize, some people just don't want the best for others. And that's real. And so you got to protect your house too.
What about narcissists? It's a good point because, whether we're talking about politics and saying like everybody in politics is a narcissist, And it's a scale. Everything's a scale. But also they say that about CEOs. Do you think there's a space for it? Is there a way to deal with them? And other red flags?
I don't know the psychology on this, so I would be careful about talking about it too broadly. I would use Arthur Brooks' dark triad research. And the interesting part about a dark triad, I think, is that it's actually hard for them to be incredibly successful with large teams over time. I think extreme levels of narcissism mean that it is hard for you to have continual success at a high level in a big team or ecosystem. Now, I do think even myself, you know, you and I are on camera all the time. I look at myself online way more than I want to. I definitely have narcissistic tendencies. But
that also means that you're not a narcissist. You know that, right?
Oh,
because you can ask the question whether or not you are or think you are, you're not.
Oh, I like that.
Because that's the whole point of a narcissist is they think they have to be perfect. They have to be looked at as being the better.
Yeah, that makes, yes, having met a few of them, that tracks. But I think it's actually really hard to be a CEO. And if you don't care about your people at all and you don't care about anybody else but yourself, it's hard to lead people for a long time. And so I don't think it's as common at the highest levels of CEOs as possible. I do think politicians as individual operators, where would it be easy to be narcissistic? Celebrities, you don't have to have big teams. You're an individual contributor. Politicians, simultaneously, you have vendors that come in and out and back you. Like individual power players, I think it's much easier. And then CEOs who haven't been in the game for a really long time. But I'm sure some people think that like Elon is or Steve Jobs was. And I don't know if they've ever taken any tests, but it seems to me like it would be hard to inspire as many people as they have for as long as they have.
Seems like there's a ceiling to that. It's kind of one of those ceiling things because they're working at getting people to work out of fear a little bit, as opposed to love, which feels like love is quite infinite in its potential.
Yeah.
I'd be curious. Is there any thoughts on that when I say that?
No, I think it's lovely. I try to think if I operate from love in my business. It's probably not as much. I would say more operate from maybe I want to use the word like fun or fulfillment. I don't have a lot of trust. Like when have you ever met somebody early and then they go, I love you. And you're like, I just met you.
Oh, yeah.
Can't. I'm instant distrust, honestly, which maybe says more about me than them. You know, maybe that's lovely that they can look at so many people and say, I love you and mean it so consistently. I sort of reserve it. And so in my businesses, I'm careful with words like love because when I love, I'm going to try really hard to do everything possible to keep you in my life forever. And that's just not going to be the case with everybody in all of our businesses. And I can be loving perhaps towards people, but I'm not sure I would ever operate from love as a CEO. What do you think?
I think when I say love, it's like a family member, right? Like you can kind of hate them at sometimes, right? But love is like, I want you to win. Like I see you working your ass off and like almost like a friend or like a family member. Like the love is like, I'll do anything. It's not that there's no accountability. It's that I respect you and I'm not looking at the time on the clock. I'm looking at like, I don't want to let you down. Love is like, I don't want to let you down because I care about you. Not because I'm scared I'm going to get fired, but like I care about you and I don't want to let you down.
Yeah, that's lovely.
As opposed to me down would be like, get fired, right? But I want to let you down because I care about you.
Yeah, the word care resonates with me a lot. And I think, you know, if your people don't think that you care about them, you're not going to get much done ever. And I think you're right. And I think it's the same with bosses too. Bosses, friends, you know, you wanting the best for others and truly thinking that them winning only gives you more opportunity to win is huge. And the people who end up thinking, oh man, that person's winning and so I can't, will never be successful. I mean, we have a saying here, which is winners are never whiners. And I do think when you're a winner and I see Danica win, I don't go, that means I didn't get that cover. I'm like, that's amazing. This is so cool. You broke another ceiling for all of us. Now I'm even more likely to win because you did it. It's incredible. Keep going.
Yeah, it's a dangerous personality trait when somebody doesn't want someone else to win because it feels like it takes away from them.
Very common.
Very common.
And I think that is our crabs in the barrel, you know, perspective. I actually was wild. One time I was in Washington and there was a pier where they had these huge, probably the size of this table, big, huge drums that were open and full of crabs. And what was interesting is they had this cold water jettisoning down on them, but they were all over the pier. And underneath the pier was where the crabs lived, the ocean. And so literally these crabs are like stacked all the way in the barrel with the water coming down on top of the pier, like 2 inches from freedom. But the crabs in the bucket, they don't let the other crabs escape. And so because of that, tens of thousands of crabs, they don't even have to have lids on them. They just all stay. And so I think sometimes us humans are the same way.
Right. This is a little like, isn't it golden handcuffs that you call it too? Sometimes where somebody just gets comfortable enough or familiar enough. It's like just good enough. There's a real freaking danger to like just getting paid enough or like just being happy enough. Whether it's, I mean, I've talked about this with friends about relationships too, where it's like no real reason to leave, but also not really fulfilled. Yeah. Should you seek the more fulfillment, or I'm going to guess you say no because it's called golden handcuffs and handcuffs are usually bad. But at what point in time do you make that decision to make a change because you're really not that inspired and not that happy?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think you don't have to do it as fast as people think you do these days. A lot of people say, hey, if you're unhappy in your job, just jump, just quit. And at least when it comes to business, I don't think that's true. I think it's okay for you to be scared to go do the next thing.
Yeah.
And to monkey bar it, baby.
Totally
fair. Grab one thing, keep hold on and then try to swing to the other one before you jump. Yeah. I kind of don't resonate with people that say that you have to sleep in your basement, sleep on the floor, a buddy's couch in order to succeed. I want a bed. And I think you can have a bed and that's okay. Yeah. When it comes to relationships, my husband's the best investment I ever made and most important deal I ever did. And the flip side of that deal was also real bad. So, I don't ever want to do that again. And so I do wish that I had moved faster out of that one. And I do wish that I had thought harder about getting into that one. And I think, you shouldn't feel bad for moving on and moving on quickly the second that it's not working for you in a relationship. And it's kind of like the same as firing somebody. Like, if you should be in the relationship or not. Are you choosing comfort or are you choosing hard? And you get rewarded for hard, not comfort.
To like kind of wrap up a little bit, I'm curious because you've hired so many people in different businesses and various different places that you probably have a pretty good survey of like personality profiles for certain jobs. So even if you were to just take one of your businesses or your main business or an individual one, whatever it is, that gives you a few good sort of personality traits to describe, it might be a way for someone out there that's not sure what they want to do to go like, oh, I have that personality trait. You're telling me that's a good position for me?
Yeah.
Great. So if you could kind of go through that, like a CEO, a vice, sales, like all those different departments. Yeah. What are the most important personality traits that create success?
Yeah. Well, one of the most interesting studies I've seen lately shows that over time, IQ has nothing to do with getting promoted and making more money in corporations. Very little to do.
Thank God I have a GED.
What does actually drive a lot of career progression and actual money is whether your colleagues like you or not. So that term personality hire, you actually have a higher likelihood of outperformance and making more money if people that you work with like you than if you are better, which is wild. So it is more important to be liked than to be competent according to the math. And so with that in mind, I made a lot of mistakes early on where I thought heads down, serious, not that nice, abrupt, but I'm going to work really hard and I'm going to hit all my goals. And because of that, I got passed up for promotions. And I didn't realize that there was a game to be played here, which was that you have to be liked in order for people to want more for you. And so that was a crazy thing that I realized. So for instance, we have somebody, you met her. I have an employee at our company called Lindsay. And Lindsay jokes, she self-calls herself a personality hire, which is silly because she's highly competent. But she is what one of Arthur Brooks categorizes as a cheerleader. And so she's very positive. She is always upbeat. She has a lot of energy. She's a yes, we can type of player. And because of that, she has a very high likability score. And so her ability to progress is pretty high. The downside to that is she has a high ability to say yes to too many things, which she would be honest about. And so because of that, she has to manage those both sides. But if I had to optimize for one thing in a career, it would be first be liked before almost everything else. As opposed to, for instance, a poet which is what Tanner is and what Chris, my husband, is. And the poet is, artistic, detail-oriented, very specific, more serious. And you can take the test at Arthur's website. And they're great at creative roles that require a lot of attention to detail. But he has to be careful that he has, positive affirmations and things to say for the team, because he's more likely to be risk and downside focused, just like, my husband is. Navy SEAL makes sense. If you're a cheerleader in a Navy SEAL, you're dead, right? If you're a poet in a Navy SEAL, you probably make it. And so I do think it's important to know thyself.
Do you think we should ever retire completely?
No. The numbers say that when you retire, you're more likely to die. You're more likely to commit suicide. You're more likely to be unhappy. And in fact, I think retirement was a carrot that was dangled in front of us to allow the world's most expensive program to be run, stealing money from the youth and giving it to the old, which is Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And so I think retirement is a fallacy. And what we should have is levels to the game. So you work harder when you're younger, you continue when you're highly skilled. And as you get older, you go from pure time working to experience and expertise working. But I think that your brain actually depletes when you do not have labor to move forward on it.
So how do you transition then from going from retiring essentially from one job? Because there probably is a point at which you won't want to do something.
Yeah.
Like what's the outlook that you have when you go, okay, I'm not retiring, but I'm moving on? Like, is it think about your hobbies? Is it volunteer? Is it start a side hustle no matter where you're at with some other project? What do you do? What do you do if you're in that position?
If you don't know what to do next in your career stage, there's an incredible book called The Second Mountain that is a great book to read about what to do after you've climbed and summited the first. And maybe you don't want to go that way again. Maybe you don't want to go that high again, but where would you go next? There's also a great book he used to be, he was the CEO of Hotel Vitale. He basically thinks that every career, there are 3 stages. And so you have like your first career, and then you have your second, which is your midlife career. And then finally, what makes you happy is becoming an elder and having your third level career. And in that position, you're not actually the one doing, you're the one advising, just like an elder actually would. And so I don't know why. I was young when I read this book. It must have been 5 or 7 years ago. But it really resonated with me with this idea of we should have elders in our company, and we should really pay attention to those who have walked the talk. And so in my companies, most of them have people who are in their 60s in some way, shape, or form. They're probably not the ones grinding and hustling, but they've already seen so many repetitions, and they're an incredible adult to have in the room. And so I don't think you should retire. You should share your expertise. Would you say that you have had 2 careers thus far? Driving and now?
Yeah, I guess I'm in my second career.
You're in your second
I was
career.
racing, and then now I have 2 wine companies, the podcast. I started a little candle company. I do broadcasting. Speaking engagements.
And I bet you feel the same way. Like that first racing career, you were probably ready to be done. And then I bet there'll be a point where you see yourself not doing all of the things you're doing now. And then after that, you'll have to figure out what that might be.
Good advice.
This is fun.
Thank you.
Thanks for letting me be here.
I understood about 12% of what you said.
I don't buy that for a second. No.
Thanks everybody for listening to the Pretty Intense podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you like what you heard today and you want to hear more, please click on the subscribe button.